For months, the US-Iran war has been fought in the Middle East, but some say the war might be coming home to Americans, specifically coming for their water supply. At the end of July, dozens of water facilities in the US state of Minnesota announced they had been hacked. In some cases, their control systems had been taken over remotely, and they were forced to shut down operations. Soon, 6 other states revealed they'd been victims of similar attacks, and officials warned the scope could be much wider.
There's a lot of evidence pointing to Iran and the attacks against the water facilities that is happening across the United States.
This is Cynthia Kaiser. She was the Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI's Cybersecurity program and now heads the Halcyon Ransomware Research Center.
So the attackers targeted some mini computers that run America's water systems. Think of them of like temperatures and valves of a water plant. They're going to control pumps, pressure, etc. So the attackers were able to get onto some of these devices that were directly connected to the internet. Then they changed settings and passwords and locked the operators out.
There's certainly no lack of motive for Iran to try to sabotage U.S. infrastructure. The two countries are at war, and U.S. President Trump has repeatedly threatened to do the same to Iran. In one post in March, he specifically warned the U.S. could attack Iran's water desalination plants alongside electricity plants and oil wells. So is Iran now retaliating? Experts say it's next to impossible to trace an attack like this one back to the particular individuals behind it. But there are other ways to link it to Tehran.
We know it's exactly this actor. It goes into several factors, which includes, has a certain actor targeted a sector before? In this case, Iran's targeted the water sector for years. Does the certain actors have the capability to attack? In this case, Iran does, and actually FBI, CISA, and a host of other U.S. government agencies had warned that Iran was already targeting the water sector and other critical infrastructure across the U.S. through these means. And then finally, do they have the motivation? Like, who might have the motivation? In these cases, there is not really a financial gain element. So that takes out a lot of criminal actors, leaving nation states. And Iran is the one with the most motivation right now to conduct these attacks.
The surprising thing isn't that alleged Iranian hackers targeted Americans' water facilities. It's how easy it was for them to pull it off.
This particular example almost doesn't count as hacking.
This is Joshua Corman. He's a former chief strategist for the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA. Now he runs I Am The Cavalry, a group that advocates for better security for connected infrastructure. I asked him how hackers could attack water plants in at least 7 U.S. states with apparently little effort at all.
They're looking for devices like this one, a PLC or programmable logic controller. It's a very common device in industrial control systems that's really important. They were never designed to be on the internet, but increasingly they are being put on the internet for convenience, for remote access, and the like. But in the case of the attacks I believe we're going to discuss, many of them were just sitting on the internet, discoverable with no password at all. So it's not even necessarily a matter of hacking. It's just that the very benefits we get from remote access can be given to our enemies.
Intelligence officials believe the hackers weren't targeting specific facilities. What they were likely doing was searching the entire country for the most vulnerable systems.
A lot of the locations where there was more serious consequences are in very, very small towns. And it's enticing to think, we're so small, why would we get targeted? Why would someone come after us? And you understand that from an impact perspective. If you're looking at that only because you want to have someone's going to have a giant impact, of course, maybe they're not going to target a very small town. That's not what these actors do. The actors find anything they can target and try to have an effect so that they can go out in public, amplify it, lie about it, make them seem bigger than they are to cause chaos and confusion.
Now, in all the cases we know of, the attackers weren't able to cause physical damage. Several facilities had to shut down operations briefly, but were able to regain control. But Corman says that what the hackers did should make a lot more people a lot more nervous.
There's far more devastating effects that could be caused with the level of access that they enjoy. One of the payloads we were worried about for Undisruptible is a water hammer. It's a property of physics where force is mass times acceleration, and you can turn on or off a valve quick enough that you can shatter pipes and pipe infrastructure.
And we're not just talking about drinking water in your house. If you can disrupt a country's water supply, you can bring it to its knees.
Water is life. Water is, you can't go 3 days without water. No water is no coffee, no showers, but it's also no fire hydrants to put out fire. It's no cooling for data centers or cold chain for food. Everything depends on water. And here we are. It's one of the most life safety, one of the least prepared. And we have more regulation for our credit cards than we do for our water supply.
Water as a sector is more vulnerable across the US than other critical infrastructure sectors for several different factors. One, they just don't have the same kind of funding as a lot of other sectors because they're often run by the local city that they're in. Two, there just isn't necessarily the redundant capability. Like, if there was an attack against a power grid of some kind or like something having to do with the power, there's often other power plants nearby that can help share that load. But with water, there's no other capability.
So who's to blame? Trump had a strong opinion about that.
Today, I just want to mention that we heard in Minnesota there was a cyber attack, and they blame it on Iran. I don't think so. I blame it on Minnesota because they're grossly incompetent.
The governor of the state of Minnesota is a Democrat and outspoken critic of Trump. So instead of blaming Iran like many experts do, Trump is focusing on his domestic political opponents. I asked Cynthia Kaiser if there's any truth to Trump's accusations.
The FBI has noted that at least 7 states had utilities that were impacted by this campaign, and there's some media reports that have indicated at least 12 states had this. So I think that goes to show that it's a much broader issue than just one state. And so it's easy to play this blame game of this person should have done more, this place needs to take things more seriously. But the truth is from the federal government down to the operator level and everybody in between needs to take a look at what happened here and decide if there's additional things they can do to make us all safer.
While this series of attacks is affecting the US, other countries shouldn't think they're out of harm's way.
The attacks against the water sector that are happening across America could happen in other countries, and they have before. In particular, Iran's targeted water in Israel. And actually, in that case, that was a few years ago, we saw the U.S. swept up accidentally in that campaign because they had some of the same equipment that was present in these Israeli water utilities. And I give that as an example of how this can spill over. Often, these are automated tools that are going out on the internet, finding what's vulnerable and what might be directly connected to the internet, and then conducting these operations. They may not even know it's in another country or not. So even if you're not the intended target, you can get a little more swept up within this.
So what can local infrastructure facilities do to protect themselves?
The way to fix that is to never have these devices directly connected to the internet, put them behind a firewall, and have strong, unique passwords. Those 3 steps would stop this type of attack.
Well, I mean, it's sometimes unhelpful to say this, but as an orienting principle, if you can't afford to protect it, you can't afford to connect it. So this is one of those really dangerous moments where I think we race to adopt something for its perceived benefit and don't do the cost-benefit analysis. What we're encouraging most of these organizations to do is a day without SCADA or a day without internet. Can we find out how successful we would be if we had to do manual downtime operations? Do we have the documented process? Have we asked the retiring water engineer to tell us everything they do under every circumstance, to capture and curate that wisdom and knowledge? And what if you people are afraid to even try a single day? So if you're not trying to deliberately drill what you do in case of emergency, then you won't know how prepared you are. So this is one of those no regrets decisions. We're asking as many water plants as possible, especially those who support a hospital, to ensure they can manually operate if they had to.
Experts say that for now, it looks like the attacks were aimed at more psychological objectives than material ones. That is, making US infrastructure look vulnerable. But the shock of it all could end up serving as a wake-up call for authorities to stop pointing fingers and start doing what they need to do to make their water systems safe and secure. I'm Ami and Isif in Berlin. Thanks for watching.